Think of how many children you could trick into eating healthy foods if you just really thought about what you were calling what you were making at home.
Think about how many adults you could trick into eating healthier foods by
Well,
doing the
that's
exact same thing. Hey, producer Potts, it's journal club time.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I love that we did this last month and I'm just excited. What are we gonna what study are we breaking down today?
I'm really excited about this study. I've talked about it before. I talk about it even in my book. But I want to do like the super deep dive. It's called Increasing Vegetable Intake by Emphasizing Tasty and Enjoyable Attributes, a randomized controlled multi-site intervention for taste-focused labeling.
Is this the one you talk about with the college students?
Yes.
I love that. Okay, good. I'm excited. Let's do it.
So I think the reason why I love this study so much is because it really informs messaging when we're talking about changing our food choice towards overall healthier eating patterns, and basically says that all of the things that I just said are wrong, that I should not frame overall healthy eating patterns and choosing foods for their health benefits in that way. And instead, the value of focusing on you still get to enjoy tasty foods. So they start off with, I didn't actually realize how much different like psychology studies there are where they like give a group of people like crackers and they tell one group like these are really healthy crackers, they've got all of this good stuff in it, and they tell another group like, oh man, these are junk food crackers and they're terrible, right? And then they watch like how much crackers people eat with those different ways of talking about it. Or they'll like give people carrots and they'll say pick out the carrots that you think look like they'll be the tastiest to you. Or they'll say, pick out the carrots that you think are the healthiest and are going to give you the best like health impact. And when you tell people to pick out the tasty carrots, they take more carrots and they eat more carrots. If you tell them to get the healthy carrots, they don't eat as much carrots. It's revealing this like fundamental flaw in how we talk about health promoting foods, that just talking about them in that framing deters people from making those choices, which is fascinating. I don't have a good solution for like how to integrate this into Nutrivore, but I do have a big takeaway of like how we can use this in our day-to-day lives to make making those like healthy changes into habits easier. So I think there's still like really important takeaway here for each of us. So can I tell you the name of their studies? So you know how like often human studies will have like cool acronyms, right? Like there's NHANES, right? The Nutrition and Health Examination Survey, Health
Yeah.
and Nutrition Examination Survey, right? That we get so much different epidemiological studies from out of the United States. So their study like had a cool acronym, and it was called the Delicious Impressions Support Healthy Eating Study, or DISH.
That is so brilliant. I love that. That
I know,
like
it's so great.
so smart, so smart.
So what they did was they did the study in 5 different university dining halls throughout the United States. The study was 3 months long. And so real world settings. So it was, you know, people who eat in a college dining hall, it's a lot of students, but there'll be some like staff and faculty as well. So they actually have like the breakdowns of, you know, the population, the gender differences, the ethnicity breakdown of the different dining halls, you know, how many people were coming through. So they were all, you know, fairly comparable. They tested the effect of how you describe a vegetable dish across 71 vegetable dishes that were composed of 24 types of vegetables. So actually just a huge amount of data. And what they did was they took the same vegetable dish, right? So green beans prepared the exact same way, and they gave them one of like three conditions. And they even controlled. So they would have in the same dining hall, you'd have that same green bean dish, uh, like with these three different names, 5 weeks apart, and they would control the rest of the menu. So they were put beside the same foods on the same day of the week. So they controlled, like, really impressive for this type of study. They
Wow,
controlled all
that's
of those
cool.
different things.
Okay.
So they either gave this dish a like neutral basic label, so green beans, just green beans, or they gave it a health focused label, nutritious green beans, right? Their health focused labels were constructed using words that communicated nutritional qualities and health benefits of vegetables, drawn from words identified in linguistic analysis of how restaurants and promotional programs describe their healthiest foods. So very much, if you have this the different types of labels that you'll see on food packaging, on menu items, right? Nutritious green beans. So they were like really trying to replicate what is currently being used in the real world. And then they did their taste focused labels. So they used different types of words. So they tried to keep it fairly short. But for example, our green bean would have been called sizzling Szechuan green beans with toasted garlic. So they mostly tried to keep these descriptions to about 6 words. And they tailored each taste focused label to the vegetable dish to provide expectations of specific flavors. So words suggesting taste, ingredients, or preparation method, and to convey at least one other theme intended to elevate the expectations of a positive experience. So words suggesting excitement, indulgence, tradition, or geographical locations. So they kind of divided their like taste, flavor, focused descriptions into like the words came from 4 places. So one was exciting. So words like twisted, sizzling, splashed, or boldly.
Love that.
The second was indulgent words like glazed, creamy, mouthwatering, caramelized, and juicy. The third was traditional words like old-fashioned, classic, country style, abuelitas, home style, or mamas. And then the fourth was location-based words like New Orleans, Shanghai, tavern style, Thai, or Provence, right? So like all of these words that we have a lot of different associations with that are really positive flavor associations, right?
I love
So
that they really thought about every little aspect of this. This is fascinating.
so then they tested this again across 71 different dishes that featured 24 different vegetables in these 5 dining halls. They total was 137,842 individual dinner or diner decisions. So a huge amount of data from 185 days. That's actually 6 months of data collected. I think it was like didn't quite run in all of the different university centers at the same time. And their 2 primary outcomes were selection of vegetables. So what's typical in these dining halls is that it's self-serve, right? So someone's walking through, they put something on their plate, and then they go and check out, swipe a card, whatever. And then the second was consumption of vegetables. So did they select the taste-focused labeled vegetable more or less than the health-focused, more or less than the basic description, even though it's the exact same dish, right? Those green beans are prepared the exact same way in all of those scenarios. They just have a different sign in front of them. And then did that affect how much of them they ate? So we've got some really cool graphs that I'm going to show you. So first is just looking at selection. So this is showing you compared to the basic label, right? Compared to just green beans.
Right.
Giving it a health-focused label reduced selection of those green beans by 15%.
That's not surprising, though. That's not surprising.
So you're looking at the exact same green bean dish, and if it just says green beans, you are more likely to put it on your plate than
Select
if
it.
it
Yeah.
says nutritious green beans.
Right.
But then if it says sizzling Szechuan green beans with roasted garlic, you're 14% more likely to pick those green
Wow.
beans. So the difference between the health focus label and the taste focus label was 29%,
Wow.
which
That's amazing.
it's huge. I mean, that is just such a huge difference. So you walk past, you're expecting.
Think of how many children you could trick into eating healthy foods if you just really thought about what you were calling what you were making at home.
Think about how many adults you could trick into eating healthier foods by
Well,
doing the exact same thing.
that too, that
So,
too.
I mean, this is not a surprise. This was the hypothesis that the authors had based on previous data that basically shows that in the moment of food choice, flavor is our top priority. That it for most of the people, for most of the time, when you are choosing food, you are choosing food based on what you're going to eat, like what the flavor is, what the taste is. You're not really thinking about a lot of other things. So when you're going down the line of past all the vegetable dishes, when you see sizzling Szechuan green beans with roasted garlic, you're like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to put that on my plate. But here's where like the psychology is really mind-blowing. So that's just selecting them, right? That's just putting them on their plate. But what they actually did in, I think, 2 of the centers, they weren't able to do this in all of them, was they actually measured how much food was thrown out at the end. So they like took these plates and scraped them and figured out how much of those green beans was thrown out. So they were able to measure how much did people feed themselves and then how much was thrown out to get a measurement of how much did they eat. And this is what's so cool. So this is just comparing health focused versus nutrition focused. So the black bar is health focused and the gray bar is taste focused.
Okay.
And showing this is the difference between selected. So they selected like 1.88, I think, kilograms more vegetables on average when they were flavor focused compared to health focused. They threw out about the same amount of vegetables at the end of the day. So there wasn't a big difference in how much was wasted, which means that when you do the math, they consumed 39% more vegetables when they had the taste-focused label compared to the health-focused label. It turned out to be 1.78 kilograms more of those vegetable dishes were
Just the
consumed.
psychology piece. That's fascinating.
So it actually, and this builds on a previous body of like psychological research, that when you are expecting something to be tasty, it will be, right? That's what it shows us, right? So you go, ooh, sizzling Szechuan green beans with roasted garlic, like that sounds great. Let me put some of that on my plate. And then you're tasting it and you're like, man, this is delicious. Whereas you're like, health, nutritious green beans. All right, I'll put some on my plate. I gotta get my nutrients. All right. That's fine. Again, that's full. I'm full of this. I don't want to eat anymore. Right? Like that, literally the expectation of a positive flavor experience manifests a positive flavor experience.
That's fascinating. So it really kind of leads into, I mean, like you said, like you haven't figured out, I can see why you said at the beginning of this video that you haven't figured out how to put this in Nutrivore, because Nutrivore is about learning about the nutrient density of foods. Like
Right.
that is the premise
And the
to
health
me, all of our,
effects, right?
and the health effects.
Yeah.
So we talk about foods in a very nutrient focused and health way. But I will say, if you look at on Nutrivore.com, in the recipe section, there are actually a lot of really delicious looking recipes there. And no, Sarah hasn't used psychology to name the recipes, although now I think we should.
Now maybe we go back and name them all in these different ways.
But I think it's fascinating to learn all those statistics and to see how much thought was put into the naming of that. It's fascinating.
So they did a couple of like fascinating, like extra little analyses. So one of the things they did was they had people rate the tastiness of the different dishes. And they basically showed that the tastiness of the dishes was not a factor in how much people ate. But the dining halls that had, on average, the yummier vegetable dishes had more people select more of the vegetables, period. So when people got used to, yeah, the vegetables here are always really good, they also ate more vegetables. So like there was like a couple of extra little analyses, and they also did these like extra studies to like make sure that it was the words and the naming. So they did a few like supplementary studies where they did like internet surveys where they like presented people with like different descriptions and basically said like, how likely are you to eat this, or how tasty does this sound to you? Or they presented them with photos, right? And basically tried to like, is this because it's a surprise, right? Is this because, oh, I would never hear green beans described this way, and oh, that sounds novel, I'm going to try that, right? Is it because of the surprise, or is it because of the flavor expectations? And what they were able to show is that it was the expectations of deliciousness, of the flavor. And so yeah. So how do we what is our like, we should talk about, we always talk about limitations in this
yes,
segment, and we'll talk about that. But
that's
I want to talk about like big picture. How do we implement this? And right. I think to me this is like, it falls back to permission to make healthy food in ways that we enjoy, right? Like one of the like background pieces of information they talked in the introduction to rationalize their study was basically the perception that we have on average that healthy foods don't taste good, right? I think diet culture has taught us that if we're enjoying it, it doesn't count, and that it only counts if we're kind of like choking it back. But that's not true. Like, first of all, huge body of scientific literature that says a vegetable is a vegetable, right? Like, doesn't matter if it's canned or frozen or roasted or steamed or boiled, like you're going to get the benefits of the nutrients in that vegetable no matter how you eat them. But this just shows like the value of maybe, look up some recipes, or ask your mom or your grandmother or grandfather, right? Like for their family recipe for this thing, right? That you have nostalgia for, that you remember, like, what's your, yeah, green bean casserole you always made for Thanksgiving. Like, how did you actually make it, right? Like find that tradition, right, in those recipes. Or, if you're just making it yourself, like find the cool descriptors, right, that hit on the flavor, the experience, the region of the world that those flavors are drawn from. Like what is your version of sizzling Szechuan green beans with roasted garlic? Was it roasted garlic or was it toasted garlic? Either way, it sounds
one of the examples
delicious.
that you give often that I think is such a great tip that I've started incorporating myself is, you talk about how legumes are one of the foundational foods, and they're one of like very nutrient rich, very nutrient dense, really good for us to include in our diets. And you've turned me on to these different pasta variations that are legumes. I've even found a mac and cheese that is made with legume pasta that because like Kraft box macaroni and cheese is the thing that I still always crave, even though I gave up a lot of processed foods back when I was in the whole diet world more than I am now. So it's great that I found a new alternative that has nutrients, that is valuable, but also it gives me that lovely cheese powder that I've missed so much.
While giving you a lot more fiber and a lot more protein. So it's
exactly,
and more vitamins and minerals. So you're getting more nourishment, but also you're getting something that's going to be more satiating, right? It's going to fill you up faster and keep you full for longer.
And it triggers that memory from being a little kid and having, your mom make Kraft mac and cheese with hot dogs or
just fun
whatever
fact,
it is.
As a immigrant in Canada, we literally just call it Kraft dinner. Like that's like how you call tissues Kleenex, right? Like that is just the name for boxed mac and cheese is Kraft dinner, or for short, KD. This is all of Canada. Just calls it KD. It's got its own, it's like a cultural phenomenon. And also one from my childhood that I remember very fondly.
That is too fun. That is too fun.
All right. So we always want to talk about like the limitations and the call for future research.
Right.
So here's one of the limitations that the authors call out specifically. We were unable to measure individual differences that might have moderated our results, such as dieting or restrained eating status. And we acknowledge that health-focused labels may be preferred by dieters and restrained eaters to help them avoid unhealthy foods. So they're actually saying that the result might be even bigger if it wasn't for the effect of people on a diet going, ooh, nutritious green beans, I'm going to grab those, right? So they're saying like this might actually be making a difference look smaller than it really is, because there are people who are going to go, oh, wait, sizzling Szechuan green beans with toasted garlic. That doesn't sound like it's on my diet, but nutritious
like a healthy
does.
choice.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the other thing that they basically want to do is they want to figure out the application of this. So how do you add this onto like food labels on like bags of frozen vegetables in the grocery store? Like how do you actually like apply this practically? So they call for more research to build environments that invoke sizable changes in choice and enjoyment of healthier foods, right? So how do you scale this so that it's not just a college cafeteria, but that it is the grocery store aisle where everyone's buying their food, right? Or the restaurant, or like the drive-through where there's more nutrient dense and less nutrient dense choices. How do you use these types of taste focused labels,
right,
to motivate the choice of the more nutrient dense, long-term health promoting?
Because there's been this long running narrative that in order for something to be healthy, it has to be bland.
Right. Plain.
Steamed
Brussels sprouts. Like,
right. Ugh, yeah. Gross.
I know, no. Right? Sorry, Mom.
No.
My mom used to boil Brussels sprouts. Yeah, so they're much better roasted. Also, they're just much better now than they used to be because of
little olive oil, get them
breeding.
Nice and toasty, roasty in the oven, and add in some chopped bacon, and they're delicious.
Yeah, I like absolutely delicious. I like to toss them with a little balsamic vinegar and maple syrup on the other side.
That sounds good too.
Toasted pecans or pecans.
But I mean, that's the thing, is like the thing that you do so well with Nutrivore is you do remind people they have permission to make foods in a way that are tasty to them, yes, and that can look different for everyone. It needs to involve culture and history, yeah, and because food is part of life, food is part of, you say, the human experience, and we should all enjoy it, and we can do that and be healthy.
Yes. Well, and when you prepare, especially foods that are like not part of your normal routine, right? If you don't eat very many vegetables right now and you want to build that lifelong healthy habit, preparing those vegetables in ways that you enjoy is what makes it doable, right? What makes it so that you're excited to eat that vegetable later, right? Or to do it again tomorrow. It's like what builds the consistency that helps build the habit. So it is like, I think it is critical to understand the value of preparing more nutrient dense, more long-term health promoting foods in ways we enjoy. That's how we turn that way of eating into a long-term eating pattern rather than into a diet.
Right. Because it's as simple, like you said, as leaving the lettuce and tomato on your burger. Right. You get like a burger out. Or it might be, if you love to get a pizza night in, load it up with vegetables on the pizza, right? It's like small things like that
can have a start salad on the side, right?
Salad on the side, yeah.
Or you really want pizza night, maybe you're finding your nutrients earlier in the day, right? So maybe you just made sure to pack in a ton of vegetables and, maybe some seafood and some legumes earlier in the day, and then you're just also enjoying that pizza, right? Like there's different ways of approaching healthy eating patterns. I mean, the thing that's so important to know about healthy eating patterns is we're looking at the average, right? How many servings per week or per month of these different foods. It doesn't necessarily have to be like equally balanced meal to meal. And it is okay to make room in our lives for foods that are just comfort foods, that are just delicious. But what's great is like there's so many different ways to make these small changes that increase our intake of these nutritionally important foods. So whether that's, adding vegetables to the pizza or having a salad on the side, or just having like really vegetable focused, balanced meals earlier in the day, right? Like, or making sure that pizza night's just once a week and not 3 times per week, right? Like, there's different ways to approach this, which means you can figure out what works for you, like what is the most sustainable for you so that you can maintain these overall healthy eating patterns and figure out how to fit a nutrient focused Nutrivore diet into your life rather than like rejigging your entire life in order to eat healthier. And I think that is, again, like in the interest of making healthy eating changes sustainable, maintainable, right? Just long-term healthy habits. We have to figure out the ways of making those overall better choices, not just painless, but enjoyable.
Right, right. So, with that all being said, where can we find more information on how to eat like a Nutrivore in this permissive structure that allows for flavor?
Might I recommend my book, Nutrivore, The Radical New Science for Getting the Nutrients You Need from the Foods You Eat. Very focused on both the nutritionally important foods to add, but also how to make room for all foods and an overall healthy eating pattern. And also just making nutrition really personal, right? So here's how specific nutrients are contributing to your specific health challenges and what foods have those nutrients to add more of to help improve your long-term health. And there's 12 mix and match style recipes in chapter 12, along with 15 snack suggestions that are really catered to like increasing dietary diversity, but you could also use those recipes to just like use up whatever you happen to have in the house, right? You can use them to cater to your own preferences, use up what you have in the house, or intentionally mix it up. But either way, they're like formulas for nutrient dense, health promoting, nourishing, filling, satisfying meals that is basically how I cook every day, but in recipe form.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you.